Nobody prepares you for how exhausting caregiving can be. Those are words from Nicole Beckett, founder of Hero Generation. Caregivers give so much, but who is really looking out for them? Hero Generation is here to lighten the load, offering practical tools, care management, delegating tasks to family, and receiving emotional support, and a network of people that truly get it. Take care of yourself too. Visit herogen.co for the support that you are looking for. And the best part is that it is free to get started. Don't miss out. As a caregiver, I remember some moments where conversation was hard and nothing that I did seemed to really bridge that gap of connection. And I wanted to connect, but sometimes we don't often know how. That's why Zinnia TV means so much to me. It's not just a screen or a TV, but it's a bridge to create calming, beautiful videos designed specifically for people living with dementia. Nature walks, gentle music, everyday routines. It's like they found a way to speak directly to the heart without needing words. So whether you're a family caregiver or a professional, Zinnia helps bring a sense of peace into your day. Visit zinniatv.com to learn more, and we invite you to use the code GATHER20 for 20% off your subscription. Have you been thrown into a caregiving role, overwhelmed, emotional, and unsure of where to turn? For so many families, including myself, navigating senior care can often feel like stepping into a maze without a map. Today, my guest is Christie Stukenholtz. She is the CEO of Senior Care Finder, and she knows this feeling all too well. When she struggled to find care for her grandmother, she realized just how broken the system was and decided to do something about it. She founded Senior Care Finder, a platform that is now helping nearly 100,000 care providers connect with families who need them most. In this conversation, we talk about how families can finally get help finding the right care options quickly, clearly, without the added stress. We look at what are those important factors that we need to consider. We explore the power of turning frustration into purpose, the weight carried by the sandwich generation, and what a more compassionate system can really look like. Here is my interview with Christie. Hi, Christie. We finally get to visit. Can't wait.
I'm so thrilled to be here. We've had a few bumps along the way, but I'm glad we're finally together and hopefully get to have a rich conversation today.
Too. I am too. Thank you. When we had visited before, being drawn to your story, realizing that you have created solutions and not only in your work, but your personal life impacted that. And I love that. We all
Mhm.
have that story of care. So I know it comes from a personal place. Tell us more about you, and your story and your grandma. I know that's a big
Yeah,
story.
absolutely. So, born and raised in Lincoln, Nebraska, never thought I would start my own business or anything like that. My husband actually worked in the senior living industry for about a decade and would often share, the frustrations and things that he would experience and opportunities to do things better. But that was not really part of my world. I was traveling and consulting and doing work around human capital and market research. But it wasn't until then my dad called, and my grandma lived in Seattle, Washington, to let me know that she could no longer, stay independent and safe in her home, and asked if I could help search for a solution for her. And I felt quite confident, if I'm being honest. I had my husband who, worked in the industry. I felt like I was pretty savvy and smart as it related to doing research online. And so I jumped in excited to help, and I quickly learned that the process was not very consumer friendly, and there were not a lot of resources out there to help educate myself and really, even in an unbiased way, be able to kind of create a list of what was important to me and kind of work through that. And so, I had the good fortune of hopping on a plane and flying out there and renting a car and going from place to place and really uncovering the wait list situation in some cases, or how we're going to pay for this. So we ultimately found a great place for her that we felt confident in. But it was really on that flight home, I looked at Keith, my now husband, and said, this was 2015. And I said, this cannot be the experience that everyone is going through when searching for care for someone that you love so much, right? Your mom, your grandma, your dad. And, he kind of smiled and said, I've been telling you this, that there's not a consumer friendly solution to really help someone navigate this very scary experience. And so that's really what tipped us off. And I decided, I did a bunch of research and really couldn't find anyone out there approaching the problem in the way that I felt like was really consumer focused. And so we jumped in with both feet and tried to create it ourselves.
So glad you did. And you did that so well. It really is. I have so many friends or family that will reach out, right? Having worked with older adults and ask those questions about how do we even do this? Where do we go? How do we even discover what's available to us? And it usually is for families, it happens in that crisis where they have to make that
Yeah.
decision pretty quickly. We always hear plan ahead, but we just life happens and things happen and it
Yeah.
can be very overwhelming. For you, when you notice those challenges, for people that, what are some of those challenges? I know you kind of spoke to some of those, but also
Yeah.
what steps can we take to feel more empowered and less
Mhm.
overwhelmed in that search?
Yeah. So you actually mentioned it. My biggest piece of advice really would be to start the conversation way sooner than you think you should, right, with your loved ones, and really have the conversation while everyone is well and healthy, and start to. It can be uncomfortable, but it will save you a tremendous amount of discomfort down the road, right? If you can really understand what are that person's wishes, where would they like to go, or would they prefer to stay home, and what are the financial components of that look like? And so, that's a big piece that can help people. A few things to really think about is, in any type of search you're doing, Nicole, you've probably experienced this where you get to a website and instantly, in order for you to be able to see any information, they ask for your contact information, which can lead you down, quite the rabbit hole, and it can lead your email and your phone and all the things to start ringing. And so I would say be skeptical of that. We've really tried to build our platform in a way that does not bar information and it is comprehensive, right? So we want everything to be there. So I would just encourage people, if you feel like something's off, it probably is.
Mhm.
If you get to a site that there's a bunch of listings and you start to notice, like, geez, the phone number on every single one of these providers is exactly the same, might
Right.
be a little off, right? And so pay attention to those things. And I would also say read ratings and reviews online. Providers are more and more aware of their online reputation. They know that that's where consumers are starting their search. And so read those and, look and, consume as much information as you can before you have to, dive in and pick up the phone and kind of have a conversation with someone.
So true. And at times we're also juggling not only working, we've got young kids, we're taking care of older adults. Is there ways that we can navigate that phase of life? I know for you, you had that experience, right? Where
Yeah.
you're trying to do it all. So I know it's a little bit of a segue, but I think it's important to acknowledge, right? We've got so much going on and
Mhm.
bridging that gap for that time in our life.
Yes, I'm definitely sitting in that seat. I have two little kids, and grateful my parents are both still here, and everybody's getting older, right? Every day. And so it's not a new challenge, right? It happened before us, and it's kind of that circle of life, right? And for so long, you rely on your parents, and they're worried about your safety and your well-being and all of those things. And at some point, as you grow older, that shifts, and suddenly, it's not like a moment, but suddenly you realize, like, oh gosh, now I'm thinking about their safety and their well-being. And so I wish there was a magic wand to solve for that, right? It's a busy time. typically in someone's lives where you're caring for young children and you're also sometimes caring for your aging parents or sometimes grandparents. I think the biggest thing, again, is to start that conversation. The more proactive you can be, use a platform like Senior Care Finder where you can just do your research without anyone, calling or emailing. You can kind of just look around and be educated. And that's helpful too. But it is just, everybody deals with it.
Mm.
Whether you have kids or not, right? Everyone has a lot going on in their lives and a lot of priorities, and our loved ones are front and center in that conversation. And so the more prepared we can be to, for if and when something might happen, the better.
Yeah.
And be willing to, lean on people and lean on the resources that are out there to help. You don't have to take it all on.
Yeah, the tools. And, as you were sharing about that, it really is if we can put tools in place that make us more efficient, right, with our
Mhm.
time when it's so limited and our bandwidth is not like it used to be. You had referenced this before, some of those things that come up, whether it's on different senior living websites or as we're looking for care. I know
Mhm.
for families, we want to feel like there's transparency and
Mhm.
build that trust when we're looking for options. And I think too, the word pressure comes to mind.
Yeah.
Really do not want to feel pressured. We want to feel like we are able to make the decisions when they're right for our family. Is there any other advice or red flags we should look out for, not only when we're searching online in general, but with some of those sites and community websites?
Yeah. I mean, everything we shop for
Mm.
today, right? If our shopping behavior has evolved, right? And so whether we're looking for a house or a car or a community or care for a loved one, consumers are far more educated and they want to do their own research. And so if something feels confusing or it's not straightforward, make note of that, right? A big topic of conversation today is all around price transparency. Typically, the number one thing, right, that families have to consider first before they move forward in their search. So, transparency and pricing is very important. Depending on the level of care, there are government ratings that you can look at in terms of quality of care. And so that's important. And so I would just be mindful of that. We all want to be educated and leverage the resources that we have.
No, I love that you brought that up. I was going to ask you that question
Yeah.
about price transparency. Are you
Mhm.
finding that communities are listing their prices on the website, or is it something you've noticed that we still really have to dig for and it's not very clear?
Yeah. It's a topic of conversation, I would say, in the industry, and you have providers on both ends of the spectrum in terms of where they stand. From the standpoint of Senior Care Finder, everything we do and everything we build is through the lens of that consumer, right?
Mm.
So, what is the experience that they're going through? What is the overwhelm that they're feeling? Most often, people don't know anything about this industry or the types of care or the payer sources or all of those things. It's very confusing. And so we want, when someone lands on our platform to be able to take a deep breath. And while the content can be confusing, we want the platform to be straightforward, right? We
Mm.
all know how to search. We all know
Mhm.
how to use a filter and all
Mm.
of those sorts of things. So we do have pricing transparency on our platform because we know it's a really important thing that we've heard from consumers that they want and need to know. But I think the industry still has a ways to go in terms of that being kind of the gold standard for everyone.
Right. I agree. I know it is a topic of conversation and one that, is both sides of the fence are
Yeah.
represented there. I love the consumer focus. I did an interview actually not too long ago with the head researcher for US News and World Report
Mhm.
on those best ratings for nursing home. I know they've got one for senior living coming out. And
Yeah.
it is very eye-opening to see the extensive research they do and diving into the ratings and the why and understanding, okay, if we're looking at these different communities, here's what we can take note of what's important
Hmm.
to us. And I think, location is a big one.
Hmm.
Obviously, cost, price, and then you want quality care, right? So if you
Right.
don't have all of those things line up for you, yeah,
Hmm.
not happening. There is the beginning of our search when we're searching for what we're looking for.
Hmm.
Uh, we kind of talked through some of those top things to prioritize. In your experience, not only online search, but even in person, do you
Hmm.
have things that should be priorities or families to consider so they're making informed, confident decisions?
Yeah, that's a complex question with
So
lots of
individualized.
right with lots of layers. If it were all just so straightforward, obviously price is a big one, right? People want to know if they can afford the option. So that's a really big one. Location typically is two. So you oftentimes want your loved one to be located near, some family so you can go visit or whatever that might look like. And the other thing I would say is, meet the staff, go there, walk through the front doors and see what it feels like. Or if you're in a situation where you're looking for care at home, meet some of the potential caregivers and compare a few options. We find most times on our platform, a consumer is comparing 2 to 3 options side by side and maybe calling and touring or meeting different caregivers. And that does give you kind of at least a comparison point to feel some confidence. And that's really one of those things where you can look at the beautiful pictures, you can take an online tour, but nothing can really replace that face-to-face interaction or that feeling that you have when you interact with a provider.
Yeah, completely. And you and I know in our conversation before, we were talking about how high performance teams, right, is really
Mm-hmm.
crucial. And you want the community where you are having your
Mm-hmm.
loved one to have a really great team dynamics. And from your perspective, where do you see those qualities in terms of defining how those teams, how can families identify, right, if
Mm-hmm.
that it's taking place in that environment?
Yeah, that's really, it's hard, right? I think, building a business on my own, coming from, the background that I do, which is all around people,
Mhm.
I have a real focus on building a high performing team within my own, business. And so that means a diversity of talents. That means really understanding what people are great at and putting them in roles that ask them to use those talents and strengths so that the whole together is way better than any one of us alone. Again, I do think you can feel that. I think you can ask specific questions to different people if you were to walk in a building. I think you notice that. I think the other thing to think about if you're interacting with a caregiver is what interest do they show back in you or your loved one, right? How much is it selling and how much is it seeking to understand and know the person? Because they should be concerned about whether that or not that person would be a good fit within their community too. So that interaction is really important. And also knowing, if you're dealing with a salesperson, that person's probably not going to be there if your loved one moves in. So who are the other people on that team that you need to know and interact with and have confidence in before you make that decision?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great point. It really is. That first person we might interact with isn't going to be having that hands-on
Mm.
care. So we really want to get to know the whole team and who's going to be a part of that. Yeah,
Sometimes easier said than done, right?
I know.
But important.
It is. It is. And I think, I always tell families that they have agency to ask
Mhm.
those questions, and you're making a very big decision. And it's okay to say,
Yeah,
I'd love to meet the care team and who is going to be
absolutely.
working with my loved
Hmm.
one. Looking at Senior Care Finder, there's different ways, and I love the search, right? It starts with location, but it goes
Hmm.
in through different types of care. And for caregivers, when they're starting that and navigating their own search, I'd love for you to just highlight some of those like tools or features that make
Hmm.
this process more simple that you've put into place.
Yeah. So, we think of our platform, it's a two-sided marketplace,
Mhm.
right? So you have consumers searching for care, and then
Yeah.
you have the providers that provide the care, just like Uber, right? Two-sided marketplace.
Yeah.
And so really what we needed was through the experience that I had and many, many people have had around like, what is the most important information that I need? And so we do have pricing available. We do have videos and virtual tours. When you connect with a provider through our platform, you connect directly with the provider. You are not connected with a middle man or a woman. We are not compensated based on whether or not you move into a certain community. So by nature of our business model not being set up that way, we are driven to be comprehensive and unbiased. We also have the ability for you to compare different options side by side, contact, like I said, providers directly, and we're getting ready to roll out some really cool tools that will help you, right? So if you're going to go tour or have a conversation, what questions should you ask? What
Mhm.
other things should you be thinking about? What other resources might you need as you start along this path? And so we're getting ready to launch a lot more resources so that when a consumer lands on our platform, they can take a deep breath and really feel like they know how to at least take the next step forward with confidence.
I think that is so great, specifically the unbiased, right? I think
Mm,
families wonder, is this community being placed in front of me because there is that push financially and then that doesn't
mhm,
feel great, right? Like we know
mhm.
as consumers how to that's a possibility that's there,
Yeah.
right? And so to know that we're having access to all of the information that's available. Yeah. And on the
Mhm.
provider side, right, they have to feel really good that they're able to connect with families and older adults and having their place.
Exactly. Providers are thrilled because by the time a consumer reaches out to connect with a provider through our platform,
Mm.
they're well educated, they're high quality, they've done their research. And so providers really love to get a contact through our platform because it's like, oh, this consumer is going to be high quality and ready to potentially move in or learn more or things like that. So it's really a win-win all around. And so we're excited to have really filled that gap in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, you're seeing we had the conversation around, okay, there's price transparency that's
Mhm.
happening, innovation, conversations. What in
Mhm.
those conversations and innovations in senior living, home care, aging, what's
Mhm.
exciting you right now? And
Yeah.
yeah, what do we see happening in the future?
If I only knew, right?
Right? We all have that crystal
But
ball.
the reality is by 2030, in the next 5 years,
Mm,
all of the baby boomers, 73 million of them will be of retirement age. And we know that about 70% of them will need some sort of care. And I'm sure you're very educated on this, Nicole. The industry is not equipped to handle that level of demand. And so I think we're going to continue to see, if you talk to your aging loved ones, it's very, very likely that their response as they age is that they want to stay at home. And so really looking at how home care will evolve, I think will be very interesting. There are a number of fascinating technologies out there that are built to enable someone to be able to stay at home longer, but while also combating that issue of loneliness, right? And community and things like that. So I'm really interested to see how the industry meets the demand that's right here, right now. And our needs and wants are going to continue to change as well. And thinking about, they call it typically the adult child influencer that is helping
mm,
navigate. But
mm.
more and more, I'm seeing the adult grandchild influencer, which is what I was in my case, right? Searching for my grandmother. So really thinking about how does that generation interact and consume information and do their research and all of those types of things, I think will really evolve the world of senior living and care.
I think so too. And when the data looking at the statistic of the caregiver, it is much younger than I
Mhm.
think we know, right? That
Right.
18 to 34, they're really stepping into that role and playing a major part in not only care, but finding more support
Yeah.
systems. Yeah. To also expand, you also have search for home health care, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and hospice,
Hmm.
adult day services. So it really is comprehensive when we're looking because we might not quite need that assisted living or nursing home care, but to have all of the support systems available in care.
Yes, exactly. So, oftentimes I think everyone's minds goes to assisted living or a nursing home, right? But the truth is, there's so many other types of care available, or even you think of independent living or no care, right? Active adult, age restricted living that we have on our platform as well. So we really want to be a resource that you can search everywhere from independent living all the way through to end of life care and get good high quality information that can help you navigate that path.
Thank you. I'm so glad it's comprehensive for people. It really makes that one place we go, right? Be
Mhm.
able to have all of our options rather than have it be so fragmented, which is
Right.
frustrating, so
And
frustrating.
most of the time, people don't even know, right? Like, what is the difference between independent living and assisted living, or long term care, or home health care, or home care? And
Mhm.
so, just being able to educate the consumer quickly is really a goal too.
Absolutely. Thank you. Your story, right, having walked through that as supporting family, resilience, having the innovation, as we wrap up our time, what do you want to leave for families as a message of hope that might feel stressed or unprepared and alone
Mhm.
at this time of
Mhm.
life?
I would say start the conversation.
Mhm.
At your next family dinner, just start the dialogue is really important. And just know that there are resources out there built to serve the consumer. So, Senior Care Finder is one of them. I know there are many others, but there are places you can start without feeling like you're being sold to, that should be very intuitive, that can help you just start to get the lay of the land in a way that feels hopefully less daunting. And there's only, those tools are only going to get better and better, I believe. And so, use them and look for them and share them with your loved ones and your friends, because, the aging journey is really a life experience that we will all go through,
Yeah.
or our loved ones will go through. And so it's not unique to one person. And so the more that we can share and talk about it, the better equipped I think all of us will be.
I think so too. Yeah. It's so helpful as families, we can feel supported. Finally, right? We need that. Where can we go to find Senior Care Finder, connect with you, learn more as we're starting our caregiving and need support?
Yeah, so the easiest place is seniorcarefinder.com. We're across all the social platforms. If you have any questions or need additional guidance, you can always email hello@seniorcarefinder.com. We have a team of awesome people that are really committed to this mission and the experience that consumers are going through. And so, yeah, find us on all the platforms and LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere.
Everywhere. So good.
Yeah.
I will also include all of that in our episode description. And thank you. Thank you for building
Yeah.
something that is helpful, that is consumer focused, that is making a difference in how we search and in how we care. It's so important. So thankful that you have done that and created that in this great community.
Likewise, Nicole, thank you for, creating a platform that helps get the word out, because that's equally as important, to help people make sure they know they have the resources they need. And so grateful to you for all the awesome work that you're doing as well.
Thank you. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.